Hey guys, what is up? Super K-Man Rocks here, and we are here for my LTA North playoffs, round number 1 overview and analysis. I think it's fair to call this playoffs and to call it, round 1. It's technically round 2. I think the title of this video is probably going to be something like Winners Round 1. We're going to be going over the 2 series that we got this previous weekend, and I am excited. It's finally time for best of 5s here in the LTA. We've been getting some good best of 3s, I would say, over the course of this year, but really ramping it up and getting into the more important matchup shows us who is for real and who has maybe been a mirage the entirety of the year. I'm very excited. I know you guys are as well. So let me know down in the comment section below, what did you think of the 2 series we got this past weekend, and are you excited for the upcoming weekend? Did they go as you anticipated, or were you surprised by the outcomes? Certainly, I'm going to talk about my opinions, and if you know the results, you already know what I'm going to talk about, but I'm very excited to get into everything. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. If you are new here, what we're going to do is talk about both series, talking about the advantages and disadvantages that each team was able to generate. I'll be giving a player of the series and a dud of the series for each series that we cover, and at the end of the video, we will be previewing the bracket as it stands moving forward. Of course, this upcoming weekend is the lower bracket round 1 matchup, so our first elimination matchups of the LTA split, and I'm excited for those in a very different kind of way, but these are very crucial in terms of guaranteeing top 3. That's how important these are already in terms of the winners bracket. So a lot to go over, quite a few things to talk about. I am going to be taking it series by series instead of game by game, even though we still are only covering 2. As I said in the previous split, got some questions on this in the comment section. I just think it's a little bit easier with the amount of best ofs that are now happening globally because we have 3 splits and everything is so much more condensed. Unfortunately, it's just a lot more difficult for me to do game by game breakdowns until we get to semifinals and finals. I still want to make sure to do the big pageantry for the big series, but especially because this isn't even a Worlds qualification tournament, I definitely feel pretty good about going series by series. So that being said, we get to kick it off with, kind of an asymmetrical seeding matchup, as was pointed out to me in the comments section. This was the number 1 seed from the regular season getting to choose their opponent for round number 1. It was the number 1 seeded Cloud9 taking on the number 3 seeded Shopify Rebellion. And yes, the upset does happen. Shopify Rebellion picks up the 3-2 series win. They take it to 5 games, and they're able to pick up the game 5 win in just under 40 minutes. An absolutely massive upset in terms of what our expectations were, but really, can we even be surprised at this point? Shopify has shown us, I think, over and over again that they are ready to figure things out, that they are ready to show up in best of 5s in particular. I think you can look at the mid-jungle duo. Obviously, we'll talk about Fudge and Bvoy and Seos because they were excellent here. And, I'm not trying to say that this was the best part of the map in this particular series, but you look at this mid-jungle duo, and all I can think about when I look at these two now is just that they are so good when they get to the back end of Fearless, that they have so many different ways that they can play the game, and that they really are clutch. This was the exact same thing that happened with Energy back in the day as well, when that team ended up winning the league, making Worlds, and making quarterfinals. It was Contracts and Palafox really stepping up in big moments, and somehow, some way, we are seeing the same script again. And unfortunately, the script being a repetition is not just Shopify Rebellion. This is a repetition for Cloud9 once more. This is a team that has very much consistently failed to live up to their own expectations over the past couple of years. This was the most consistent and successful organization in North America since their inception at the end of 2013. And it's all fallen apart in this decade. The 2020s have not been kind at all to Cloud9, and they continue to concern me. There were a lot of traits in this series where I'm like, dang, they're just worse than Shopify. And that's not, something that I really expected to say. So let's get into the good with Shopify first before we get into the bad with Cloud9. Player of the series for me kind of has to go to Bvoy. I think he was the only player that was consistent throughout every single game of this series on both sides of the map. I think generally he was just really good. You can look at some moments in game 4 in particular where it's like, okay, the Ezreal didn't really get to play the game. Things kind of fell apart pretty quickly for Shopify, but the Jinx was a huge deal in game number 5, even if I would argue the Xin Zhao and the Annie were a little bit more impactful. The Aatrox was huge in game 5, but look at his game 2 on Lucian. Look at his game 3 on Sivir. When you're talking about the series as a whole, that's where I think Bvoy really rose, and honestly, I think this is his best split in North America. I know a lot of people are going to talk about his first split that he played with this team back in the day, but I really do think this is the best he's ever looked. I think the kind of form that he's in right now has really elevated the rest of this team. And while I do think the star players are elsewhere, I don't think B-Boy is the one that is kind of pushing the team forward. I do think that he has the mechanics to capitalize when somebody else sets him up, more so than almost any other AD carry at this level. He is very, very good with resources and, carrying games on hyper carries like Sivir, like Jinx, the Yunar in game one, you can kind of throw out at least a little bit, but those hyper carries were just, really, really solid for him. And he's been very consistent in that role. Honestly, he's been probably the most positive piece for Shopify over the course of this split. That's not particularly surprising, but it's a good sign. It means the rest of this system is rolling. And it's rolling fast. Like, there's almost nothing that feels like they could stop the momentum and the vibes that are currently being created on Shopify. And I think B-Boy is really the biggest encapsulation of that. But I do not want to discount the impact that everybody else on this team had in this series. Palafox and Contracts continue to be big moment performers. Contracts was awesome in game number 5. Even if the KDA didn't necessarily always reflect it, I think he had a great series and he was so important. Cloud9's one angle to get back into the end of game number 5 was a Nico engage, was Vulcan finding some miracle way to get into the game. Contracts was never going to allow that to happen. He was marking and spying that Nico 100% of the time, and while sometimes it wasn't always the most positive move, and sometimes it did feel a bit like, all right, man, you can kind of chill out on the Nico hype, like that Nico could not play the game on the other side, and Contracts really did lock in and kind of take away Cloud9's only real avenue to be able to get back in and to find some sort of miracle engage. I think Palafox was really stable throughout a lot of this series. Maybe not in the losses, like I think you can kind of, take those away, but again, like Palafox is an inconsistent player. If he's going to show up and even be better than Loki for 3 games, that's absolutely massive towards Shopify's, success rate. And is this not Fudge's best of 5 in many, many years, including his time on Cloud9? He played phenomenal throughout this entire series. I think that there were many moments where going up against Thanatos, I just kind of assumed he wasn't going to have the skill to be able to actually deal with a lot of the pressure that was coming in on him, and that was not the case. He more than stepped up here today in a big moment. Seos was good, maybe not quite the star that the others were, but still was very, very solid. I have nothing negative to say about Shopify, if only because this upset really defied expectations. Could they have played better in Game 4 and Game 1? Absolutely. Could they have played better in Game 5 and even Game 2? Absolutely. Like, there were moments where this team definitely needed to lock it in a bit more, but in a chaotic environment like North America, to be able to take down a team like Cloud9 in a series like this under any circumstance is already such a positive that it's hard to really find anything to, fully critique in terms of this outcome. But for Cloud9, unfortunately, I think what we've learned is that the reality is that there's one good team in North America. And I think we were all holding out hope that Cloud9 was going to be on that level because they were able to push FlyQuest for a very long time. But the story just continues to be the same for Cloud9. Every single split, they just cannot figure it out when it matters the most. And these best of 5s have been terrible for a lot of their players. Fearless has not treated Cloud9 very kindly. And I think the one player that I'm honestly the most concerned about right now is Blabber in the jungle. This is the worst year of his career. I don't even think that's really all that debatable. I think some people will point to last year, but honestly, I think he's been way less of an impact on the team this year than he was last year. I think even his rookie year when he got benched going to Worlds for Svenskeren, I think he was so good in the regular season that it's hard to sit there and say that he was an issue or anything like that. This is just, Fearless has really destroyed Blabber, and I'm not saying that that's the only cause. I think natural regression sometimes just happens for players who have played a long time, but he's picking Rek'Sai in Game 5 into Annie and Leona and Jinx, and it's like, okay, man, good luck. Try your best. This is a terrible pick, and it really is difficult to execute in this particular draft, and he did not look good in this series. I think he was the one who looked the most exposed from my perspective. I think that there were moments you could say that about Loki. I think Vulcan not having any impact on the final game was massive for Cloud9. I think Sven ended up getting mega outplayed by B-Boy in terms of the raw mechanics, and even Thanatos was not as good as Fudge was on the other side, even if I'm not really chalking that up entirely to Thanatos. That's more so Fudge playing well and Shopify just being in a positive position, Cloud9 not able to give him that same kind of support. But this is one of the best players in the league. You would hope that he'd be able to at least generate something for the team consistently in their losses. He's just not capable of doing that right now, or at least in this series. And I think a lot of it just comes back to the fact that I think Contracts was so much better in the jungle today than Blabber. And if he's going to be a liability for Cloud9, they're not making Worlds. Genuinely, that is the kind of difference that can make Shopify a Worlds team and, kind of eliminate Cloud9. Even Team Liquid can start to get into the mix if Blabber can't step up in these best of 5s and is going to start getting exploited a bit more. Hopefully that's not the case. Blabber was always a pretty big domestic performer in the playoffs before all of this nonsense. And so you just have to imagine that he's going to be able to figure it out. But again, with Fearless, especially looking at like the game 4, game 5 drafts for Cloud9, I am a bit concerned that this is something that is a genuine issue for them. And I think they need to prove it now. They've expended their extra life. They're one series away from not even making it to the, cross-regional tournament, the regional rivalry tournament against the LTA South. If they're not even making it to that tournament, it's the biggest disaster that we have seen in terms of expectation in North American history. I don't think there's ever been a team that has looked as good in the regular season as Cloud9 has and then completely bombed out. So you have to imagine that they're going to go on some sort of run in the lower bracket, but again, no more margin for error. They have to be better moving forward. And for Shopify, I'd love to sit here and tell you that this team is actually really good, but honestly, I think a lot of this has to do with Cloud9 just not living up to expectations. I do think Shopify is good, and I think they're good enough to capitalize when teams screw up, but this team is severely lacking in talent and consistency in terms of generating their own leads. If they're going up against a team like FlyQuest, I just don't imagine they're going to have the firepower to bring themselves above that. That being said, the vibes right now are immaculate. Damonte has completely turned around the identity of what Shopify is. They've gone from laughingstock to top of the league, and right now, they're in winners finals. This is a team that's genuinely competing to not just win the LTA North, but to go to Worlds, and that's a ridiculous thing that we never would have thought at the beginning of the year. But then moving on to our second series of winners, round 1. And while the first one ends up going to 5 games and is really interesting to talk about, the second one might be a little bit quicker in terms of the discussion we get. It's FlyQuest taking on Team Liquid, the number 2 versus number 4 seed. And FlyQuest absolutely brutalizes Team Liquid, kind of proving that it's ridiculous that they're not the number 1 seed. I get it. It's tiebreakers. I know how, stuff works around here, but the limited regular season ends up with pretty interesting results. And what it does really show us is that FlyQuest is so much better than every team in North America. It's actually kind of ridiculous at the current moment. And to me, that's the takeaway. It's not, oh my God, Team Liquid is terrible, although they are so much worse than they have been at any other point throughout this year. I want to make that abundantly clear. This is easily the worst iteration of this team that has existed so far, and Fly is taking full advantage of it. But even on top of that, Fly is so much better than everyone else. Like, they would have obliterated Shopify and Cloud9, and I guess we'll get the chance to see if that's going to be the case, but I'm absolutely calling my shot on that. I do not think it's going to be particularly close here in North America. So let's go ahead and talk about why I have that opinion, starting with the good things for FlyQuest, and that means player of the series. And this one, man, it's kind of tough because I think that there were a couple of great performances for Fly in a lot of different areas, but I'm going to go ahead and give it to Masu for this game 3 on the Lucian. He really was exceptional throughout this entire series. A lot of people are going to give it to Busio, and trust me, I've really been on the Busio train all year. I'm not quite Busio's number 1 fanboy or whatever, Azale's crown is taking, or also, shout out Cubby. I can't believe he's being usurped without any sort of like peaceful conversation, but I'm just gonna be on the Busio train. I don't need to be conducting it. I don't need to be leading it. I can just be along for the ride. But Masu, to me, I think I just wanted to give him a shout out for just how well he played here. A lot of people remember the Lucian game from MSI and really kind of cringe at themselves, kind of thinking just about how different things could have been for FlyQuest if something different happened at level 1. Here you go, man. Here's the Lucian Masu game that you were looking for. Like, this is the one that you want to remember, Masu off of. Jan has been phenomenal throughout this split. He's been everything that's been advertised, and he's been mega stuck on Team Liquid. Masu completely outplayed him here today. There was nothing else really to say. Now, part of that is Busio outplaying Core and just being the better support as he has been throughout the entire year, but really the takeaway should be that the bot lane is just unbelievably good. You wanted 2 young players that you could build around and kind of grow into in terms of the core of this team. You got him, man, because this is the best bot lane in North America. This is one of the best bot lanes in the world in terms of their production. Every single time I watch them, it feels like they get better. And genuinely, I think that these 2v2 can compete with almost anybody mechanically across the globe. Like, I really do think they're that talented. Now, are they going to be able to put that together in terms of an overall game internationally? Who knows? You never really know with how things go. But I think from a raw performance perspective, I fully believe that they have the talent to be able to do so. Bwipo had a very funny series. He picked the Singed in game number 2. I think that's obviously the big takeaway alongside Busio's Bard, and he did end up getting at least slightly punished for it. Impact walks away with like 10 kills because they perma-ganked top. But even outside of that, they perma-ganked him in game 3 on the Cassante and basically insta-lost the game on it. Like, Team Liquid just had a terrible strategy going into game 3. They got fully exploited for their bad strategy, and it really kind of bit them in the butt. I think Bwipo played great throughout this series. He just had to endure a lot of the negativity that comes with being, targeted by TL's game plan, and He did so. He created advantages for FlyQuest. We'll just say that. Inspired was really solid. I don't even think this is one of his better series. I think this is like an average, maybe even slightly below average series for Inspired, but he was like 50 CS up on Yuji in that final game on Maokai. Just absolutely disgusting stuff. He's so much better than every other jungler. And once again, I'm talking about quad last. I hate being a quad hater. It really feels bad, but you know, it just kind of is what it is. He's fine. APA was also good in this series, but he also got some of his signature champions. So what do you do? But at the end of the day, FlyQuest is just really good in a lot of areas. Their bot lane is unbelievable. Their jungle is unbelievable. And Bwipo, so good at being able to take resources away from the enemy team. Fly has almost no weaknesses if they just execute their strategy well. Now, are they going to do that all the time? No, they're just not going to do that. But when they do, it's ridiculously effective. And then for Team Liquid, like at this point, I feel pretty convinced that this team is just not what we think they are. And I hate to be the guy who says this because I'm the biggest UG fan. I'm the biggest Tier 2 fan. I talk about the NACL every single week on this channel. UG has downgraded this team pretty immensely. I think was better for this team just because of the way he was creating. I think UG needs to be babysat a bit more in terms of the strategies that they go for because he is more of a carry player, and I think it's taken away a lot of opportunities from APA and from Yon to be able to play the game the way they want. Like, you can't just full send Maokai Sejuani every single series like you did with anymore. It doesn't really work like that with Yuji, and Yuji's also losing in resources. He's going to get dead of the series for me. I think there was a massive jungle gap here, and again, I don't even think Inspired was playing quite at the Inspired level. Like, he was still doing things that were, atypical is the word I'm looking for, middle tier junglers. Like, he's obviously way better than that, but I don't think this was one of those like, oh, he's one of the best junglers in the world type of series, because he has those every once in a while. Yuji just was worse. Like, there's not really a lot else to say. His game plan in game 3 really came back to bite him, and the Viego did not work out. But Impact was also in the running for this, as he is going to be for almost every single series that Team Liquid plays, because boy howdy has he just been terrible throughout this entire year. The Gwen was okay, and that's what saves him from getting dead of the series. If anything, he really benefited from the fact that Bwipo just picked Singed, and if KDA wins, I guess, at the end of the day, if both UG and Impact are playing poor. But you can't excuse the Renekton game in game 3. That I certainly can promise you. That was terrible. So many resources put into trying to get this Renekton into a good spot against the Gasante, and all of them failed. It's absolutely catastrophic. The top side of the map was a nightmare for Team Liquid in this series. I still think that the rest of the team was meh. Like, Yon and Core, I think this is one of their weaker series in a while, including a lot of the losses. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Masu and Busio were really on today, and it's hard to take advantage of FlyQuest like it is to take advantage of other bot lanes. But, they weren't the problem. They certainly weren't the solution. APA was certainly the best player on Team Liquid in this series. I think he's been, really good throughout this year. I will continue to defend the tape that we've seen on APA. I think the only frustrating part is it just doesn't ever feel like he's going to be able to be a #1 option for a team like this. He needs someone else to be able to step up and usurp him as the guy who's getting all the resources, and right now that's just not happening. Team Liquid do look completely lost. It looks like this team doesn't really have the talent to compete near the top of the standings, but they should be better than a lot of these other teams. And I talked about Cloud9 going down to the lower part of the bracket and potentially getting their bearings. I think the same could theoretically happen for Team Liquid if everything were to go right. They could get on a big hot streak and start to figure things out. We've seen this team make a playoff run before, especially with Spawn back in the States, but right now it's not looking too good. And for Fly, this is the best team in the league. It's not particularly close. They're going to Worlds, and if anything else happens, that's going to be the biggest upset that we could possibly get. But even with Shopify taking down Cloud9, there really is no world where I can imagine anybody being on the same tier as FlyQuest, and I think they would improve that here today. All right, but that is going to do it for my LTA North Winners Round 1 overview and analysis video. Up on the screen, the updated standings after round number 1. The updated bracket, I guess, is a more apt way of putting it after round number 1. Shopify and FlyQuest moving on to Winners Finals. As a reminder, because they won their first best of 5, they have qualified for the cross-conference, Worlds qualification tournament. Both Shopify and FlyQuest will be there no matter what. You just have to be top 3 in your own region, and again, you can, at bare minimum, get top 3 making Winners Finals. So congratulations to those two teams. Cloud9 and Team Liquid moving down into the lower bracket. They will take on the winners of the teams that are going to be playing this upcoming weekend in lower bracket round number 1. Let's go ahead and preview those matchups, starting with Disguised and Dignitas. This is a very, very interesting matchup because, again, nobody expected DSG to be the number 5 seed. That's how crazy the records ended up being. One win will get you there, and that's unfortunate for a lot of other teams, but DSG, I think, definitely looking better than Dig right now. I think their roster upgrade upgrades were real in the fact that they did get better, not so real in the fact that they're good or anything. I think they're probably the 7th best team in the league, but Dig is the worst team in the league right now. And so DSG just end up landing in a spot where they got pretty lucky with their draw, and they will likely move on to round 2 because of it. I'm picking DSG. And then Lion versus 100 Thieves. This is a little bit easier for me to predict with the form that 100 Thieves are in. I just don't think that they're even remotely close to being able to compete with a team like Lion right now. Genuinely, I think 100 Thieves have completely fallen off the wagon with the announcement that this org is not going to be around next year, and I'm going to be surprised if they end up even, really competing in this series. Lion should not have a ton of trouble, so my predictions, DSG moving forward to take on Cloud9, and Lion moving on to take on Team Liquid. Let me know if you agree or disagree with those takes down in the comment section below. Very curious to know what your thoughts and opinions are down there, but that's gonna do it. I do hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like. It really does mean a lot to me. Lets me know you guys are enjoying the content, and it does help get this video out to a lot more people, which I'm always very appreciative of. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button. Of course, we're gonna be covering the rest of the, domestic playoffs here, but we're gonna be doing the cross-conference tournament as well to see who ends up making Worlds, but fret not, we also cover all 3 of the other major regions, LEC, LCK, and LPL every single week on this channel. We cover NACL, Tier 2 here in North America every single week on this channel, so if you want a comprehensive overview of everything going on in LoL Esports, this is the place for it. Hit subscribe and hit the bell. Of course, also follow the links in the description. I am still casting for LPL English. If you want to see some LPL games live, I am on there, once a week or so as a color caster. Links to the YouTube and Twitch are going to be down in the description. Follow, subscribe, whatever floats your boat if you are interested in that. But with all that being said, I hope you all are having a great day. I hope you continue to have a great day, and I will see you all